The Mercy Ward. The fluorescent lights of St. Mercy Hospital buzzed incessantly, casting an eerie glow down the long, sterile corridors. Night nurse Jane Thompson made her rounds, checking IVs and vital signs with practiced efficiency. At 28, she'd seen her fair share of grim nights in the intensive care unit, but nothing could have prepared her for what this shift had in store. As she approached room 237, an inexplicable chill ran down her spine. The door was slightly ajar, a faint whimpering sound emanating from within. Jane hesitated, her hand hovering over the door handle. Something felt off, terribly off. A blood-curdling scream shattered the nocturnal quiet. Jane's heart leapt into her throat as she burst into the room. Her eyes widened in horror. The bed was empty, sheets askew, the IV line torn from the wall. A dark pool of blood spread slowly across the linoleum floor, its metallic scent filling the air. With trembling hands, Jane grabbed her radio. "Code Blue, room 237. Her voice echoed in the empty room, a tremor of fear underlying the professional calm she struggled to maintain. As she waited for backup, her eyes darted around the room, searching for any sign of the missing patient. That's when she noticed the strange, claw-like marks on the wall, as if something inhuman had been there. Detective Mike Harper arrived at St. Mercy the following morning, the circles under his eyes testament to too many late nights and too much cheap coffee. At 45, he'd thought he'd seen it all in his years with the Chicago PD. But as he stepped into the hospital lobby, a sense of foreboding washed over him. This case was different. He could feel it in his bones. Dr. Sarah Bloom, the hospital's chief of staff, met him at the entrance. Her usual composed demeanor was cracked, revealing an underlying anxiety that immediately put Mike on edge. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Detective," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have a situation." Mike nodded grimly. "Fill me in, Doctor." As they walked through the corridors, Dr. Bloom explained the details, her words tumbling out in a rush. "3 patients have vanished in the past week, Detective," she said, her voice low and strained. "All from the critical care ward. It's like they've simply evaporated." Mike's brow furrowed as he scribbled notes. "Any leads? Security footage?" Dr. Bloom shook her head, a flicker of something, fear, guilt, passing across her face. "Nothing concrete, but the staff. They've been talking about strange noises at night, shadows in the corridors where there shouldn't be any." Mike's skepticism must have shown on his face because Dr. Bloom quickly added, "I know how it sounds, Detective. But I assure you, something is very wrong here." As Mike examined room 237, his detective's instincts kicked into high gear. The blood on the floor had been cleaned up, but he could still see the faint outline where it had pooled. More intriguing were the marks on the floor, long, deep scratches as if something heavy had been dragged away. And there, on the wall, were the claw marks Jane had noticed, too deliberate to be mere vandalism. A flicker of movement caught his eye. Mike spun around, hand instinctively moving to his holster. For a split second, he could have sworn he saw a dark figure looming in the corner of the room. But when he blinked, it was gone, leaving only a lingering sense of unease. As he pored over the medical charts in Dr. Bloom's office, a pattern began to emerge. All 3 missing patients had been part of an experimental treatment program. The details were frustratingly vague, hidden behind layers of medical jargon and confidentiality agreements. "Dr. Bloom," Mike said, looking up from the files, "what exactly is this experimental treatment?" The doctor's face paled slightly. "It's a highly innovative approach, Detective, potentially revolutionary in treating terminal illnesses. And highly secretive, it seems," Mike pressed, noting how Dr. Bloom avoided meeting his eyes. "I'm going to need more details, Doctor. 3 people are missing, possibly dead." Dr. Bloom sighed heavily, slumping into her chair. You have to understand, Detective. What we're working on here, it could change everything. End suffering for millions. Mike leaned forward, his voice low and intense. At what cost, Doctor? What aren't you telling me? Before Dr. Bloom could answer, a commotion erupted in the hallway. They rushed out to find a group of nurses trying to restrain a patient who had apparently escaped from the psych ward. The man was raving, his eyes wild with fear. "The shadows!" he screamed. "They're alive! They're coming for us all!" As orderlies sedated the man, Mike caught Dr. Bloom's eye. The fear he saw there chilled him to the bone. That night, Mike decided to patrol the hospital corridors himself, accompanied by Tom, a veteran security guard. The night shift had just begun, and an unsettling quiet had fallen over the wards. "You know, Detective," Tom said as they walked, "I've worked here for 10 years. Never believed in all that nonsense about hospital ghosts. But now—" He trailed off, shaking his head. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the corridor into darkness. A horrifying wail echoed through the blackness. "Damn it, Tom, flashlight!" Mike shouted. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a scene straight out of a nightmare. There, at the end of the corridor, was something. Half human, half monstrous, its flesh twisted and warped. It was dragging the limp body of a patient behind it. "Police! Freeze!" Mike's voice cracked as he drew his weapon. The creature turned, its eyes glowing in the dark with an unholy light. It let out an inhuman roar and charged. Mike fired once, twice, but the bullet seemed to have no effect. The last thing he saw was a clawed hand swinging towards his head. When Mike regained consciousness, he found himself strapped to a hospital bed in what appeared to be a basement room. Around him, other beds held the missing patients, all in various states of transformation into something else. The door opened, and Dr. Bloom entered, followed by the creature from the hallway. "Detective Harper," she said, her voice eerily calm. "I'm afraid you've seen too much." "What have you done, Bloom?" Mike struggled against his restraints. "I've created a cure for death itself, Detective," she replied, a fanatical gleam in her eyes. "A few side effects are a small price to pay for immortality." The creature growled, and with a jolt of horror, Mike realized it was one of the missing patients. "Don't worry, Detective," Dr. Bloom said, producing a syringe filled with a glowing green liquid. "Soon you'll be part of something truly miraculous." As the creature approached and Dr. Bloom raised the syringe, Mike closed his eyes, his mind racing for a way out. But deep down, he feared that in St. Mercy Hospital there was no escape from the horrors born of misguided mercy. In the days that followed, St. Mercy Hospital was shut down pending a full investigation. The official report cited severe medical malpractice and unethical experimental procedures. But the truth of what happened in those sterile corridors and shadowy basement rooms remained shrouded in mystery. Late at night, locals swear they can still hear strange noises coming from the abandoned building. Inhuman growls and the echoes of agonized screams. Some say it's just the wind whistling through broken windows. Others believe it's the tortured souls of those who fell victim to Dr. Bloom's twisted vision of immortality. As for Detective Mike Harper, he was never seen again. His disappearance remains an open case, a source of speculation and whispered rumors among the Chicago PD. Some say he simply couldn't face the horrors he'd witnessed and ran away. Others, those who knew him best, insist he's still out there, hunting the monstrosities born in St. Mercy's halls. But in the end, only the crumbling walls of St. Mercy Hospital know the full truth. And they keep their secrets, locked away in the shadows, waiting for the unwary to stumble upon the legacy of the Mercy Ward.